at the beginning, how were you finding companies to work with? Like, how are you acquiring users versus like, what are you doing now that you've pivoted and the whole software landscape is a little bit different in 2026? So I'd love to hear, like, how has that evolved?
Well, I think you always have to evolve. I do a lot of mentoring. I mentor companies all around the world, and you have to evolve. And, when people see me, they see the old guy, oh, well, he can't be up to speed on things. But, my mind is 25, but my body is 65. So, right, you do have to evolve. You do have to stay on top of the competition. And it's really all part of that business process. So you really have to learn from at the early stage, who you are, who your market is, what your message is, what your value prop is. You need a market pain that you're solving or a new opportunity. There's fewer and fewer unicorns out there. So you really need to be laser focused. And in the early stages, family and friends investment, eat 100-hour work weeks, smiling and dialing on the phone all the time, phoning as many people as you can. I used to have hair like you, right? So until I became an entrepreneur.
Murray, welcome to Product Growth Stories. I'm so happy to have you on the show. So you're the CEO of Youneeq. Can you just introduce the product? Like, what in the world does this thing solve?
Sure. So Michelle, thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here. YouneeqAI is, well, let's put it this way. It's a governance and auditing layer for AI is really lousy at messy data, right? That's where you get the 4 arms, 3 legs, and everything else. It's not good at unknown data or anonymous users. And that's what YouneeqAI is. We're really good at turning unknown into known and analyzing anonymous data. So we interact with modern AI systems, agentic and others, and workflows. So what we do is we analyze the data and we can infer to a pretty high degree what an anonymous person's, and that's our value prop. So when AI has to spend a lot of time on unknown data, it gets a little messy and it's hard to, create results. So it takes more time. It's kind of like me trying to explain this. It keeps going and going, right?
But when I looked at your site, did you pivot into this? Because or maybe I misunderstood. Like when I was looking through Youneeq, it seemed to me something around being able to identify users even without cookies.
That's right.
Is that where you started, or are you still doing that?
Well, why don't we do this? Let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. So I started in video games in 1995.
Yeah.
I created one of the first video game media sites called thegameboys.com, right? Grew it to be a market leader, took it public, sold it, and we were doing some great things. The people who bought it basically drove it off a cliff. I got the product back.
That's the worst.
Yeah. Well, I sold high, bought low back. So
Yeah.
It worked out. And the reality, and I've been preaching this since day one on the internet. I've, to Microsoft, 100 level companies, right? And it's your biggest marketing gap on any website, period, no ifs, ands, or buts, is anonymous users. So approximately 95 to 97% in most cases, users who come to a website are unknown. They're anonymous. They don't create an X, they don't buy, they don't read an article, they're in and out and disappear. So if you're making off of 3%, if you turn that 3% into 6%, what does that mean, right?
Right. Yeah.
You double your revenue, right? But everyone spends most of their marketing money on those 3%. So I really, back in the day when it was dedicated servers, there was no cloud, it was really hard to implement any sort of AI machine learning tool. And even so, we couldn't really do anything until Amazon and created in the cloud, basically. And now through distributed systems, you could share the workload and you could start doing machine learning. You can start doing complex algorithms. And
Yeah, it's much more accessible now.
exactly. So when that came along, I said, bingo, we really need to create some AI. I wanted it cookieless because there's lots of ways you can track users, local storage, browser footprints, and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
a
You're
long story,
printing.
yeah, exactly. So long story short, we built the first cookieless AI personalization engine on the market, right?
So that
And
means if somebody goes to a site and they don't get cookied and they come back, you're able to know, hey, that's the same one that was here last time that checked out this area, for example.
yes, and it's also that first visit, right?
Mhm.
So that's key to this process. So when someone comes to the website, they hang around for 2 or 3 pages. My golden rule is if someone can't find something they want in 3 clicks, they're out of there, right? So we can infer by when a person comes to a website, we don't care if you're Murray or Jean, whoever, right? That
Mhm.
doesn't matter. What matters is what does Murray like? What does Jean Michel like? Your demographics don't really matter, right? It's basically behavior, right? So you
Mhm.
come to a video game site and you're into, oh, I don't know, shooters or puzzles.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't matter who you are as a person, it's what you like. So
Right.
so what we do is as soon as a person comes into a site, we assign a code, user 1692, whatever, right? Pick a number. And then we analyze what others have done, right, as you progress. And we start inferring to a high degree what your likes are in some ways, what
I
you're,
see.
right?
So it's sort of like a recommendation algorithm or like common carts from people that clicked in the same way you did. So if you check out something, it's like, well, the people who also looked at this tended to buy these things or tended to take these actions. So you can infer a lot about the person, even with a
Right.
small amount of data. That's
Exactly.
cool.
Yeah. So, and, it sounds rather simplistic, but, this is geared for websites that have millions of users, tens of millions of page views. So this has to happen in a nanosecond. And as that data grows, and that's what AI is. When AI needs data, think of it as a child, right? And when a child comes into the world, it doesn't know much. So it has to learn, it has to be taught. And that's how AI works, right? And the more data you give it, the better the results are, right? AI just doesn't come out. It needs data to
Mhm.
to make valuable decisions. But the reality is there's good data and bad data, right? So
Yeah, for sure.
we're good at the anonymous side of things. Is there's no rocket science really in known data, like a known user, because you already know and stuff like that.
Yeah, if
But
they've already logged in, for example, you're paying
bingo.
attention to what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're really good at that. And then part of our business model was, being an end user and going out there and competing against, the large competitors. And we started to realize that we could also, over time, act as a layer in systems. So we can
Mhm.
help people make better, like AIs make better decisions because we take away that complex thinking from them so they can focus on, the hard data, the known data. We focus on the anonymous, and that allows a lot of AI, especially on the agentic side systems, is to make smarter, quicker, and more valuable decisions. So
Mhm.
Unique has morphed, and I'm launching the new website here pretty soon. Unique has morphed into more of a lightweight layer, and this has opened up the market to us too, because now our competitors, say Bloomreach, for example, we
Mhm.
can make their system better and plug into their system, and that opens up a much bigger market for us, and that's one of the
Yeah.
new directions we're going.
That the company has been around for a while. How I'd love to hear, how at the beginning, how are you finding companies to work with? Like, how are you acquiring users versus like what are you doing now that you've pivoted and the whole software landscape is a little bit different in 2026. So I'd love to hear like how has that evolved?
Well, I think you always have to evolve. I do a lot of mentoring. I mentor companies all around the world, and you have to evolve. When people see me, they see the old guy. Oh, well, he can't be up to speed on things. But my mind is 25, but my body is 65. So, right. But you do have to evolve. You do have to stay on top of the competition. And it's really all part of that business process and how you start from a simple idea and then grow it into a large business that, if your plan is to sell it and acquire and exit, right? Or do you want to go public or, there's different strategies you can do, but you still start with that one, hey, I've got an idea. Let's run
Hmm.
with it. All right. So
Yeah. So how did you acquire your first users back in the day?
blood, sweat, and tears, right? You got to
Yeah.
put in the
It's like
time.
found
Oh God,
outreach
yeah.
and yeah.
Right. If
Yeah.
you don't like the word no,
Mhm.
don't
Yeah.
become an entrepreneur, right? I can remember I was in the Valley, part of a Canadian Trade Commission. They liked what we're doing, so we went down there, set us up in a place. And I was doing constant pitches. I'd be doing 2 to 4 a day, right?
Yep.
And you do one in the morning and wow, greatest thing since sliced bread. The next pitch is that's dumb, right? Or
Mhm.
yeah. So you really have to learn from at the early stage, who you are, who your market is, what your message is, what your value prop is. You need a market pain that you're solving or a new opportunity. There's fewer and fewer unicorns out there. So you really need to be laser focused. And
Mhm.
in the early stages, family and friends investment, you know, you know, 100-hour work weeks, smiling and dialing on the phone all the time, phoning as many
Yeah.
people as you can. I used to have hair like you, right? So until I became an
And
entrepreneur.
until you had to do outbound dialing. That's
And it's and I'll give you an example of an experience I had while in San Francisco. The mayor came to the incubator that we were at, and he met 10, I think it was 10 or 11 of us entrepreneurs from all over. And I wanted to be the last, right? So, and the reason I wanted to be the last is I wanted to see how others were doing things and how he was reacting,
yeah. Yeah.
right? And by the
Get
time he
some
got
information before the last moment. Yeah.
right,
For it's your turn.
just,
Yeah.
hey, let's judge the room, right? And see who's there. And that's important when dealing with potential partners, investors, and things like that. You really need to understand who your buyer persona is, who your investor persona is, you know, all these little personas that will add up to become a success. And by the time he got to me, his eyes were, glossy eyed. He couldn't wait to get out of there. And he was just like, so, Murray, what do you got? Right? Just not excited. And he said, what do
Yeah.
you hear? What's your value prop? And I said, I'm here to create jobs. Boom. Then 5 minutes, I had his personal phone number, his executive assistant phone numbers. Next thing you know, we're getting, so you
And
understand
I
where you,
imagine like for that particular person, that's the right message for them versus an investor. Like that completely makes sense
right,
for
know
the
your
mayor.
audience. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. So,
Love that story. Yeah. So, okay, so you basically just did the difficult work of smiling and dialing, making as many pitches as possible, all that's super difficult, like calling everyone you know. I imagine that's one of the stages.
yeah.
And I hope you're not doing that today. So I'm curious, like, what are you doing now that you've taken the business like this far to actually find users? Is it just the same
It's
or
the
has it
same,
changed?
right? It's, know your audience, right? So especially now, back in the day, I remember when I took my first company public, I basically wrote the business plan on the back of a napkin. We got funded, right? It was the internet. Build it and they will come, right? Right. And that was the attitude, right? Guys are lining up to throw money at it. Nowadays, it's the opposite, right? There is so much.
People learned. Everybody from Webvan has learned.
Exactly. And it's actually gone to the extreme where there's so much money available, right?
Hmm.
That the supply of entrepreneurs or the supply of money outstrips the demand. So, you know, you know, if angels, venture capitalists, everybody, family offices, you know, they get, 100 business plans a day, right? And so they're very picky, right? So you, even with experience like I have, and it still means I'm up against a lot of other folks. So you still have to do your due diligence. You still have to be very prepared. And a lot of people, you can't go in with this, well, you know, I'm going to be like TikTok because, like I say, unicorns are not around. You know, back in the day, you could get investment early without revenue. Not
Yeah,
not
not now.
applicable. No, no, no
Yeah.
one's.
And I think with especially with AI, and it seems like it's gotten a lot easier to make a facade like the beginning. And so I imagine you need I mean people expect you to take it much further in terms of revenue before it's interesting to
Oh
invest in.
yes.
Whereas before it used to cost more just to get to that point where now people expect you to get to a few million ARR first.
Oh, exactly. Right. And it's funny. It started at like 100K ARR, right? And
Yeah.
then 200, and then 500, and then 1 million, right? And if you look at the ratios of what's sucking all the investment oxygen out of the room, AI like 5 years ago, I think was around 10%, right?
Yeah.
Now it's 43% and above, right? So that's where most of the big VC money is going, right?
Hmm.
And, that means earlier stage companies are trying to ride that wave too. So it's making it harder and harder for people outside of AI to scale and grow technology, right? So that's why, to all your entrepreneurs, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but, you know, you got to be realistic, and it's hard, right? It's very
Hmm.
hard, but you get in there and you do well. It's exciting. I love it, right? I mean, that's why I'm going to keep going here for another few years and, and
Hey,
build this.
that's excellent. And do you still like, do you have the same dev team as you had earlier, or has that morphed throughout the company's life cycle? Because sounds like a little bit of a new direction.
It's actually an excellent question. And I think you'll find that it's a, it's an organic growth process, right? So I've got a core group, right?
Hmm.
But as you grow, as you evolve, so does the sort of, I hate to use this term, minion needs, right? So you'll start to notice that, yes, the core group, the core
Core
group,
group.
yeah,
Yeah.
the core group, we all have the same vision, right? That's important, right? And you have a path you both agree on. you know it's about the mission statement, and then people will, it's just the way of tech, right? It's a largely project based environment when it comes to technical skill sets, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
People will come and go over time, right? It's just the nature of the beast, right? The video game industry is masters of that model, right? But
Yeah.
it's reality.
Yeah. That makes sense. Well, as we wrap up, Murray, one thing I'd love to ask you is for other entrepreneurs, other people who are trying to bring tech products to life, what would be your number one piece of advice to succeed this year?
If there's an incubator close by you, try and become part of the network or get involved. It's a great way to make connections. It's a great way to network. It's a great way to get better, right? You'll learn from mentors who will help you out on your business plan, your overall strategy, because I guarantee you, you may think you have the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's not, right? Because it's the forest and the trees. So you need that outside criticism and take it, understand it. You don't have to agree with it a lot of times, but you have to listen. And because a lot of people understand what it takes to scale and grow, and listening to them and working with them. And that's why I'm a big fan of incubators and such, because they'll expose you to so much. And a lot of them don't cost anything. In fact, some of them will give you investment, right? So,
Yeah, very low cost expertise.
yes.
Well, Murray, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, no, this has been great. I could keep going for hours, but yeah, everybody out there, it's a great life. It's a hard life, but it's a very rewarding life. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, do it, but just commit. That's what it's going
That's
to
right.
take.
Yeah, got to go for it. Thank
Yep.
you so much.
Okay, cool.